Beardy and the Beast, the second wall.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Welcome to the second wall, binge-free zone where we look at a series and discuss it in small chunks. This time we are looking at Joss Whedon's sci-fi classic, Firefly. We can be found on most podcast and social media platforms, a full list of which can be found at beardyandthebeast.com. Please watch the episode and then join Drew and I in the mess as we explore the verse.
Don't take this guy away from me. I like it. I don't know. Maybe not called classic, but certainly tracking cult of like personalities.
Yeah.
Jaws fired. Whoa! Honestly, we probably should have done like a discussion right out just to be like thoughts preceding revisiting this because we both watched it, right?
Yeah.
So this is reviewing, and I know we both seen it multiple times.
Yeah.
Um,
I know we've talked about it a little bit in some other podcasts here or there, I think.
it's just it's kind of one of those things you worry that if it's going to hold up or not.
Yeah.
But looking at it with a more analytical mind, I'm definitely noticing things that I didn't notice before.
I noticed something right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. I noticed, first time I've ever noticed this, but Mal has a cross during the fight in Serenity Valley.
Yep.
You caught that one too?
Yeah, I noticed that in a previous viewing, mostly because of how antagonistic he can be towards Book.
Yeah.
I was like, what is the manner of this relationship? So on a past reviewing, I noticed the cross, and I was like, oh, so it's one of those things that he abandoned when he was let down by everything.
Yeah.
I guess you could say.
Yeah. It's one of those nice character moments that, I mean, Joss Whedon is fantastic with little things like this. It was a nice detail that, like, as soon as I saw it this time, like, consciously saw it, I'm like, his relationship just makes so much more sense immediately with Book.
Hmm.
Like, and again, it's that concept of a lot of information, using as little time as possible, and just showing the imagery right.
The thing
So,
that I noticed, um, well, how quickly do you want to get into characters?
um, yeah, I'm good with
Okay.
jumping into characters first. Yeah,
Uh, so the thing that I noticed right at the jump was how optimistic and even positive Mal was coming out in the middle of like the firefight of his life.
hmm,
Like there was, and then in the next scene, how like cynical and suspicious and kind of like almost even downtrodden he could be.
yeah,
So the immediate switch of personalities when they lost at the Battle of Serenity Valley. I didn't notice that before. I always just assumed like this is his personality and how it was.
yeah,
So
uh,
noticing that change right out was really interesting.
yeah. I think on this viewing, I think I read it slightly differently.
Hmm.
Because like you said, he's definitely kept up that cheerfulness, but there were still like just kind of moments of glances where he knew the weight of what was happening
Hmm.
and was clearly trying to keep the morale up of everyone else around him. Right? He said, "We're just too pretty to die." um, but going with that with the time skip, of course, after the battle, um, I saw that as just showing the immense weight that has to lie on him. Just having that happen. I mean, it's it really shows both sides of his character very well in
Hmm.
those scenes, right? It's like, no, he does take these things very seriously, but can also be very jovial when need be, and you see that with his character throughout.
Mhm.
Um, and definitely don't mess with his family, uh, being a big thing.
Well, I was kind of like perplexed for a while, and then grew to kind of come to an understanding how they were introducing the characters. Um, it was interesting to me because they weren't so much as doing it like putting someone in a position and then having them express themselves in some way. The way
Mhm.
that they seem to be introducing the majority of the existing crew was by showcasing their relationship to Mel.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was a couple moments where you had like Kaylee and Anara, and you could tell a little bit of their relationship. But the majority thing was essentially introducing the crew as um, through like as a door their relationships with the captain, and it
Yeah,
was a great
there's
entry
definitely,
point.
yeah, definitely. Is that it was also interesting to have the characters introduced, uh, and I mean, Mal and Zoe aside,
Hmm.
um, we were introduced to all of the characters outside of it being that stress element.
Hmm.
So you actually just saw their natural personality. So I think like Wash, oh, curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal,
Yeah.
right? And then oh crap, and just being able to see that okay, this is how he is, but instantly turning around and going, nope, he's capable.
Hmm.
And they did that with all of the characters throughout. Um, I think really the only character that kind of got a delayed intro was Jayne a little bit. Like every other character, the first time we saw them, got a very clear idea of their personality. Jayne was a little bit more delayed.
Yeah, I guess
Just minor.
everyone straight up um they said like this is how they are in their personal and this is how they are like in a stress situation.
Yeah.
And Jane's definitely was pushed back more. It made you think more about like what kind of person this is.
Mhm.
Um, Before you thought he was just like capable, gruff strongman,
Yeah.
and then like my favorite character moment in this is like you see him making fun of Kaylee one moment and just being like obscene, and the next moment like he's hidden in a corner, kind of peeking through a window because he's concerned about
Yeah.
her.
Oh, so good. Um, yeah, it's an amazing character moment. And I think it's, I really, I guess we'll go with Jane here for a character right now. Um, I think they did so much with him, and they needed to delay his actual character moment because it said it raises those questions. So it does bring it up when the lawman basically looks like he's trying to buy Jane, and it actually does immediately go to your head. It's like, is he going to sell him out?
Hmm.
And even even at the end of the episode around there, where Mel says, why didn't you turn me in? It's like, oh, the money wasn't good enough. It's just done in that right way that it leaves that little bit of it's like, would there actually have been an amount to pay off Jane to turn on Mal? Like there still had that bit of loyalty there,
Hmm.
which was which is really telling with Jane because he's very much the mercenary type character, and throughout he's just talking about getting paid and
Hmm. It was definitely it gave me a vibe this episode, especially with Kaylee being shot, making me like wonder about how much whereas the captain would be like the central hub of the characters everyone's kind of revolving around, at least like for their purpose being on the ship. Um it seems to me that Kaylee is kind of the glue that holds it together.
yes. And I know, granted, we're not going to go too much into the future of the series in this case, but I do know that that's actually a big thing with um, Kaylee. Is she's the heart of the ship,
Hmm.
and it was one thing that I know Joss Whedon and Tim Maynor were talking about when they did it. It's like if they're stuck, throw Kaylee in danger.
Yeah.
And it works because she is. the heart of the ship, and you can just see that reaction. I don't think you would have gotten the same reaction if it was Jayne who had gotten shot,
Mhm.
as you do with Kaylee. Kaylee, I love Kaylee's character, always have. Um, I think Jules Sates is amazing. They really show her again. She's kind of the innocence, the heart of the
Mhm.
ship. They show that very well. Um, you know, she's the little sister,
Yeah.
and she takes so much pride in what she does. Right? She's not going to be good in a fight.
Mhm.
We know this, but like again, even when basically delirious and shot, she's still managing to direct everyone around to get that ship doing what it needs to get away from the Reavers.
Yeah.
Like, just that again, that strength of character and that she's designed so well and written so well. I just always had the attachment to her.
Well, and I mean, she's structured in such a way that you're supposed to.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I really like about this show in general, just as a general, is every member of the crew has a reason why they could be your favorite character,
Yes.
and reasons why they might be your least favorite, I guess you could say. Easily mine is Jayne, but it only happened and when like later in the series when he gets his funny hat.
Yeah.
Um, but it's almost like there's a lot of reasons to like Wash, just because of his goofy nature. Like Zoe's very capable. Um, Kaylee, of course, being the heart, and honestly, I don't like Simon too. But I appreciate how dedicated to his sister that he is.
Mhm.
It's all he cares about in the entire world, that he threw away like everything he has and is now on the run with his sister.
Simon's an interesting case. I think so. I mean, let's again try not to jump too far ahead in the series because we're
Yep.
assuming we're only talking episode one. So um, they do a lot of interesting things with Simon right from the get go. Like they write him in the right way that you do immediately think he is the mole.
Hmm.
Like they keep him very aloof, and I mean, then like really, he's he put a bigger wanted mark on Serenity than
Yeah.
pretty much everyone else there. That's saying something. Uh, but again, it's that dedication, and I know Kaylee says like, "Oh, he wouldn't have let me die." I'm like, "No, I'm pretty sure he would have let her die." Like that, like because as you said, he's got that dedication, and to think just because he's a doctor and just because he does, care and he he knows what he cares about more, and nothing's getting in the way of his family, and that I actually think is a very big, powerful character moment for him. Uh, I mean, really, Simon is out of the entire crew. He is com- the only one that's completely out of his element,
Hmm.
and I think I feel like with the way he developed his character, and as you said, just kind of not having quite that same connection with him compared to the others. I feel like he would have been that type of character that we would have seen a lot of growth throughout future seasons if there were some, because he had the most for it.
The thing that he did show is the most commitment and dedication out of everyone. And that's, I guess you can see a parallel there because it's obvious that uh, Reynolds would do anything for his family, his crew. And in that same manner, as a parallel, Simon would do anything for River.
Yes. Yeah, good. And just I completely believed that. I said I completely believed that. No, he would have let Kaylee die if that's what it
Hmm.
meant. If that's what it had to. Um, it's like sure he might be nice, but I mean, actually, it is interesting because you say that. It's like there is almost a foil relationship between Simon and Mal.
Hmm.
And actually, Kaylee is the one that points that out. Um, you know, when she goes, they're both nice.
They just come from
Uh,
different backgrounds.
yeah, that's exactly it. But they both can have that same fire,
Hmm.
and like the actors just do it so well,
Well,
and show it well.
when you can tell from this one that Simon would actually fit well in this kind of ragtag family, um, simply because how dedicated he is to his sister, like that could amalgamate well into the like existing cohesion.
Yeah, there's still that same loyalty, even
Hmm.
if it's not the same place or to the same person, right?
What kind of speaking of people who don't appear to be out of their element, book.
Mm,
I noticed right away when Mal was saying uh, we need to go out of our way to deliver supplies. They did a shot of Book where he like cocked an eyebrow. Is like, no, this guy's lying to me right now.
yes.
And most people would be like, oh, he beat up the lawman, but like you already knew there's something illustrated a little bit earlier, which I didn't catch that on any other previous viewing of this,
Mm.
which was very nice.
Yeah, it, like 'cause he's interest like in we go to his introduction and he's clearly looking to travel. Like, I mean, he's in a port, and just how quickly dismissed the first ship that the first person who tried to get him hire him, but immediately kind of connects to Haley afterwards, or Kaylee. My brain's dumb. um, to Kaylee afterwards, where and she also shows being the heart. It's like, oh, it's just the journey you're caring about. Not doesn't matter where you're going. Like you just want to get out there, uh, which is interesting because clearly that's what he wanted. But he's also you can tell he's traveled. You can tell he's been through things,
Hmm.
and they build that very well. And no idea what, but he is clearly capable and very perceptive. I actually really liked the interactions between him and Inara for that.
Mm. Especially
Like,
that ending scene where the counselor was being counseled.
yeah,
That moment, like the I think I got on the wrong ship moment, I
it,
really enjoyed.
yeah, and there's a lot of that throughout with just the way they were talking, like just when they're both talking about Mal, it's like,
Mm.
no, it's the idea that of him being a mystery to them, uh, that being what draws them, and really both of them.
Hmm.
I think stuck around that because and we see with Mal, we see that lightheartedness, but we see that instantly turn around to that fierce protector, like the conversation in the mess just perfectly shows that. It's like, nope, you do not get to talk to Kaylee like that. No, you would have done that for anyone. Like the it's like waiting to an Inara unless you've got more for book.
No.
um, that's one of the things I really liked about Inara with that. Um, with those same conversations, like with book going, like, why do you let him talk to you like this? And just like, just immediately though, drums like, yeah, I've called him a lot worse. Um, it's just kind of that.
This is the nature of our relationship. We say things like this to each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, sometimes it hurts, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time, it's just, yep, that's just how our relationship is. I've seen, couples like that in real life.
Yeah.
Um, like it feels so natural. Um, because she's where where Kaylee's the heart of the ship. I think she's definitely the soul of the ship.
I could see an argument for that.
Yeah. because again, everyone clearly, again, she's clearly respected there.
Mhm.
Um, and and she can, it's like she knows, she understands the playing dirty, but can also be that guiding light in some ways, like a conscience almost for
Well, and
them.
they
Like,
and they showcase that a bunch of the times here.
mhm,
Like her trying to use her best influence to do what was right.
yeah.
Um, it does make me wonder if it actually had any effect on Mel, the like I'll leave too situation,
Mhm. Yeah.
because there
It,
was a hesitation there. So it's kind of like, yeah, I could see her being a conscience.
yeah. Yeah. She's such an interesting character. Like, clearly the diplomat of the group.
Mm.
And again, you just get that immediate idea that she can play just as dirty if you need to. And that's pretty much throughout the characters, except for Kaylee. I guess we haven't really talked about Zoe yet, much either.
So we are wash, but the
Yeah.
thing is, they're introduced in such a way as like the loyal companion of the captain and the loyal wife um, of the pilot.
Yeah.
So she actually hasn't been introduced as her own character per se.
Mhm.
Um, you've only seen her torn between her loyalties.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's kind of like we don't actually know too much about Zoe or Wash as of yet.
Yeah. Other than, again, like Wash being clearly a very capable pilot,
Mm,
and Zoe clearly knowing how to fight.
yeah, capable warrior.
Yeah, very capable warrior. Yeah, I'd agree with that. We don't quite get as much from them, but it's interesting because of all of the characters, I think like you almost have to look at those two together, even though we see them apart and they're clearly very different personalities. But almost everything they do is, as you said, they show kind of just loyalties and how complex it can get,
Hmm.
even even within a crew as tight knit as those in Serenity. Um,
It
so
does some of the things that they did, like you mentioned, the dinner table before, and of course the like, what if we just told Mal that we needed time off, sort of thing,
yeah,
shows that even though they are quite tight knit, that there are these conflicts going in between them, and they're all just like pretty standard interpersonal things.
mhm. And that's one of the nice things overall. It's again, all of these characters feel real.
Hmm.
Like there is the clear interpersonal issues that do come up, and doesn't destroy them. It's just these are things we have to deal with. Um, and I said that's why all of the characters you look at, yeah, no, I have reasons to like you. I have reasons to not like you.
And that's why that
Like,
like I think the introductions were done in such a great way because as I mentioned before, they did it as to their relationship with Mel. Like they put a pin in the episode and they kind of like uh, brought everyone in that way, at least the immediate crew. Um, and I can't think offhand, but I think when we go to watch the other episodes, there'll be like a primary character and then secondary characters, but everything will be how the relationships are attached to the primary character of that episode.
yeah,
Um,
and
kind of
and that
like
happens a lot
how,
with.
well, like how they did that with Buffy a lot. It'd be like, oh, this is Willow's episode, this is Buffy's episode, Xander's episode.
Yeah,
Um, sure, Buffy did like the big fight, um, but there were definitely ones where it was like, oh, this is Xander and Cordelia.
yeah.
So I can't, I don't remember it being that way in the other episodes of Firefly, but I'm gonna be watching for it now.
Yeah. I
And
can remember a couple of ones that seem to focus a little bit more, but I do think Mal sticks. Oh, actually, might be very similar to Buffy. But yeah, no, that will be something very interesting to look out for, as you say. Um, got some inklings in my head, but
the
nothing set.
yeah, so you had like the primary family, and then of course the crew that came on board, which honestly kind of it struck me as an anime transfer student situation. It's like, okay, we have this primary crew. How do we create an event where like additional people who would not be there normally are on board? Oh, transfer students.
And it,
I'm not.
it,
Thematically it fits. It's just like
yeah.
it gave me that feeling.
Yeah, I think I can definitely see where that feeling comes from. With that being said, I think they did the reasoning around it fairly tight, so it didn't feel quite as random as
Hmm.
the here's the transfer students. Like, look, the deal fell through. We need money, or we're not going to be able to fly anymore. Let's take on some passengers. Happens to get I mean, it's coincidental basically that they um, get Simon, and
But it's not so coincidental to be unbelievable.
yeah,
Um, it's not like it just so happened that like Mel knew something about like in other media it would be Mel actually knows of like these covert things that happen and these like uh things the military does with kids. And
yeah,
then oh no, they just so happen to have one dropped in their lap.
yeah. No,
This is
no, it was
more
the
of
right
a
type of coincidental. It
yeah.
was the he happens to be in this situation now. And again, with them painting Simon as possibly the mole right from the get go, kind of alleviates that. And then it's just, well, this is the situation they're in now.
Hmm. The only thing the only thing that really bugged me out the get-go that kind of I noticed right away that I really didn't like was Battle of Serenity Valley.
Mhm.
As soon as the Alliance arrives, they airstrike the valley.
Mhm.
Why they, if they were gonna airstrike it, why did they even send ground troops?
Um, I would make an assumption that they wanted to take the valley, not destroy the valley. But the Browncoats were putting up that enough of a fight that they had to change what they were going to be doing.
Okay. Maybe it's like there's a section of the valley that was precious minerals or like some type of like fresh water or something that you don't see.
Yeah,
But it's just like it looks like a desert valley, and then it's like, oh, our backup's not coming, and then all of a sudden the alliance comes in and just bombards it, and I'm like, why didn't they just do that from the first part? Wouldn't have
yeah.
lost so many people. But
But
if
you
I
got to
were to
remember
suspend
they
that disbelief,
yeah. Well, I mean, they specifically said that this situation got too hot for their backup to come in.
hmm.
So that makes me think that the the alliance needed to kick it up another level. Uh,
It's just a weird hole that I saw. But
mm.
I mean, I don't think they had the time to get into that more, especially whereas episode one of this is actually episode one and two.
Yes.
Um, so technically speaking, like TV movie, but
Yeah.
uh, I don't think they had enough leeway or space to kind of like. I mean, you could have panned over the valley, but I'm not gonna dwell on it too much.
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of move into the world building here in a second. There's one other character that we haven't talked about yet, even though I know there's not exactly the most to talk about yet. But Man, does Summer Cloud do crazy good.
I wasn't convinced by the acting.
No?
No, it
No?
seemed to seem forced to me.
Okay.
I don't think she was comfortable with her character yet.
Hmm.
Like knowing how she is later in the series or in the Serenity movie.
Yeah, no, that's fair. There could be a little bit of projection and just seeing the threads that are going to be there.
Yeah, it's like her panicking in front of the bin or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh nah.
Yeah. All right. Well, fine then. Some of it could be projection because you said, like, well, again, we've seen the rest of the series and the movie multiple times. Um,
They 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 did have this kind of like this great kind of antithetical moment where it shows River like being all jumpy and acting kind of crazy like well Simon is sitting there. It's like I'm top 3% of the best medical school. I am very smart and she makes me look like a dumb child.
yeah,
Like there's this great contradiction there in what we're being told and what we're seeing, and it
yeah.
does draw a lot of curiosity,
Mhm.
and it does really make you wonder what they've done to her,
Yes.
because it's though it is never said, it is shown quite well that this is not the natural state of his sister.
Yeah. There's another moment with her that seemed interesting, and again, I think it could possibly go to show how much they might have messed with her. Because again, I get absolutely no, like as I said when we talked about Simon more directly, I have no doubt that he would do anything for his sister. And she's like, I didn't think you would come. Like, I think that's even another just subtle moment of how much they've messed with her because they make it sound like they were pretty close even growing up.
um I think the way that I read that moment was that they did such bad things to her, she lost hope.
Mm,
Um, opposed to like her just not being able to see any release or safety,
mm.
opposed to like say a personality switch or an alteration.
Yeah.
Like, um, yeah, that's what I saw it as. So,
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a clearer way of what I was saying. It's like I don't think that they like just that even that losing hope is like they messed with her. Like that might not be a personality switch, but they definitely impacted her that much.
mhm.
No, she'll be fun to watch throughout the series. um, well, with that, let's kind of swap over to the world building here.
Mhm.
Um, so one thing that I really appreciate, um, just with the crew overall. So we've got these soldiers. The war's over. Well, what do you do? Well, they go and start a gang. Because I mean which actually like parallels real worlds. Like a lot of the motorcycle gangs came from soldiers coming back from the war and not having anything. So I thought that was actually worked really well. I think overall they did a lot in the series to show the setting, the theme. We have our main antagonists kind of set up like the multiple factions without even needing to show them much, which again is really well done.
Yeah, well, we're sitting there, and the way that they kind of expand upon it is we know that there are rival gangs that are only looking out for themselves to the point where they'll sell each other out to another antagonist, being just the Alliance, the Great Other.
Yeah.
And it's interesting at this point because we like our characters. But when they're kind of, the Alliance is introduced and originally talked about, you assume they're the bad guys. But truly, we don't know how virtuous our crew is. We assume they're good because they're the protagonists.
Yes.
But they very much might not be.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of like project that on, and then through some sentiment that I agree with wholeheartedly, Mel's explanation of like what the Alliance does to people not within their primary sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
You kind of go like, yeah, this organization is big, unwieldy, and is maybe not evil, but they're definitely not looking out for the little guy.
yeah, that's one of the interesting things. Like, is this because they paint the crew where it's like they're clearly our protagonists, but they do also show them as not being squeaky clean.
Mm.
Right. So they're very gray, and they actually did that with the Alliance as well. I mean, we start off with it being war. It's like, okay, of course, war is war.
Yeah.
Um, but then we have them, acting like the police or the law, and going to, stop the illegal salvaging, but immediately stopped when they heard a distress signal. So she goes like, okay, well, their priorities seem to be right. Like, again, not completely evil, but then, messing with people's brains. Like it's
Well, it's interesting because there's a bit of like a fool's kind of point of view there, because sure, they went to solve or save the carrier instead of dealing with the illegal salvage operation, but it was a troop carrier specifically.
Was a true carrier. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a civilian colonization ship. It wasn't a civilian carrier. It wasn't like a civvy ship delivering medical supplies. No, it was a troop carrier. So you go, okay, well, it gives you a feeling of a kind of grayness, but it also makes you wonder because of the way that they're painted by Mel. Would they have done anything if it was a civilian carrier? So you're kind of wondering, like, how gray is the Alliance, and how good or evil is Mel? We only know our crew goes by a certain code.
Yeah.
And that is, I do my job, I get paid.
Yeah.
And don't mess with my family. Everything is very vague, but very pointed. So they give you that general idea of the Alliance, at least from Mal's perspective. And then, like, the rival gangs are all antagonistic to Mal for... I mean, Mal's Mal.
I mean, didn't she shoot you? Yeah, but I deserved it. I had it coming. That it's interesting with that. Just reminded me, again, showing just how capable the crew of Serenity is. Both, having that crybaby set up, and even though they knew they were going into danger with patience, like, they weren't dumb to that. It's like, oh yeah, no, she's gonna shoot me again. And it's like, okay, that means we're just gonna be setting up to prevent that. Like,
Well, they really like even if you were to take out the kind of Western style music, they really set up the um, Western movie undertones quite well.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I was thinking that too. It's like, I mean, the music definitely helps. Definitely makes you go, it's like, no, you know it
Yeah.
is. And you see it even like the ship designs. Like the Firefly was designed to look like a horse.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, what it like it comes down to like the lawlessness in the West sort of thing
yeah,
is kind of the overall theme or structure rather would be a
yes,
better way to say that they're going for, and I think they've put in like some very good building blocks to start with from here,
mhm,
and it'd be interesting to see how far they go with it, or if they just put in a couple hooks and then just let it float there.
yeah,
Um, because I never really paid attention to it before. I was just like, oh yeah, space cowboys. But um, do they keep that overall feeling going?
mhm. Yeah, because this is a good question. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to kind of actually paying a little more attention to that too. Um, I mean, we know Joss Whedon is definitely familiar with kind of doing mashups of
Mhm.
genres, and it's interesting because they've showed the three major tones that kind of happen throughout this. Like, so kind of that. So we've got the sci-fi aspect for sure, we've got the Western aspect for sure, and the horror aspect
Mm.
was still there. 'Cause there's definitely a few things later on in the series that show the horror aspect too. Because well, Whedon does horror, we know this. Because like the Reavers, I love the introduction of the Reavers. At this point, we clearly have these how established these characters are, and you know they know that the Reavers are coming near, and you see Inara grab like a syringe. Um, sorry, guys, we get Zoe's description of what will happen
Mm.
if the Reavers show up, uh, and just the hopefully in that order. That's amazing. Um, you see basically the two military like get to the bridge and figure out what to do. You see Anara grab that syringe because if they get boarded, you
Yeah.
know what's going to happen. And the one that was interesting, again, shows a lot of character around Jayne because it's the first time we get to see his collection.
Yeah.
Um, but this is the first time I noticed this and it really stuck out. But it's like he wasn't choosing a weapon to fight back. It did not feel that way at all to me.
I don't know. He put a very large bullet in a gun, or that might have even been like a grenade or something.
Mm.
Um, but he definitely did. Like I think his hand was shaking in that shot.
Yeah, it was just that like you knew what I was like. I could just as easily see that being like a double barrel. And all of a sudden, you're doing your best Kurt Cobain impression. Um,
They oh, but also uh, well, that's another faction. So we know that there's a sphere of influence of the gangs and the crew, and they're all quite small. We have the alliance that's pushing out, and then the Reavers, and everything else seems to be like trapped between them. Um, and I mean, at this point, we don't even know what the Reavers are.
yeah,
We just know that they do very bad things to people.
yes. Well, again, will make Jane shiver
Yeah,
or quiver rather. Um, like, I mean, I actually think that's actually it shows the horror influences that we know Whedon has because you don't show the monster as long as you can.
yeah.
It is much scarier if you don't see the monster. So, um,
I definitely like how they showed the limited but growing influence of those factions in area. Like it was very small, but you could even see it in the very multicultural market that they were at the
Mm,
dockyards or whatever.
yeah.
So there's people selling their wares, people like arriving and departing, and then you have like just two alliance guys standing there.
Yeah.
They don't really have any power, um, because it seems like it's gang territory. I imagine with the way that what was his buddy? Buddy in the Hat.
Badger?
Badger. Yeah, the way Badger kind of expressed it is like he's not above like pushing people that he's even worked with to the alliance even for like the smallest slights.
Mm.
So it does kind of like it brings a feeling of no honor even among thieves kind of
Yeah,
situation. Or I guess
yeah, definitely.
no honor among thieves rather.
Yeah, I definitely find kind of agree with that. I think the interaction with Badger is kind of interesting because he knew what they were getting. Like
Hmm.
he hired him. I mean, I'm sure he knew that there was alliance. It would have been alliance rations and such. Um, I almost get the feeling it's like I understand him not taking it because now it's become too hot. At the same time, in the back of my mind, I almost go, um, I wonder if he called it in so he could at least try to get something from it, as opposed to because of a perceived slight,
Mm.
right? I mean, you kind of get that. It's like, oh, you're late. It's like, we're not late. We're here 2 hours early. It's like, sorry, let me rephrase. You're later than you should have been. It's a shame you weren't here 5 minutes earlier. um,
I'm just wondering,
which
like
goes,
it's gonna be very interesting to see how they build out this world,
mhm,
especially if they continue to like expand upon these factions. Like it's obvious that they'll expand upon the Alliance and the Reavers, but how much they'll do with the rival gangs
mhm.
and the people that they work with. Obviously, we're gonna have a whole lot of the relationships of the individual crew members.
Yeah. I mean, I know. Unfortunately, we kind of talked about this. Like, I know for a fact there's going to be hooks that we're not going to get answers to. That's
Mm.
kind of what happens when a series gets canceled that quickly in, much to the which is really why I called it a cult, because for some reason they didn't see it successful, yet everyone knows about this show.
Yeah, but
um,
I mean the first season was not only released out of order, but the first season is why I'm kind of worried about watching the whole thing with a more observant mind, because I don't actually think the first season here is that great.
mm,
I think this has a 10 out of 10 for potential.
mm,
Like I've said this for years, but um like you want to know how it's going to be in the third or fourth season.
yes,
But the the first season doesn't really stand well on its own.
yeah, um, yeah. I think it'll probably just be more we talk. Like, I know what stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about again how the world is building, um, and things around that, and it's going to be hard because I know of hooks right now off the top of my head that I know don't go anywhere,
Mhm.
but they could have. And I've seen, like, knowing Whedon's writing, like going back and rewatching Buffy and like realizing that there was things that they set up in season one that didn't pay off till season five.
Oh, you mean like
Like,
those eggs in the basement?
yes, like the eggs in the basement. um, well, just things with like Giles
Mhm.
and things, right? Like, again, just looks that you get in the first couple episodes that just really pay off like later on in the show.
Well, I mean, it makes you wonder if that was planned or was that just a natural um, result of them building out a character as they progress, and then from there, like, how do we make it exciting?
Yes, with that bad example that I gave. um,
Specifically Giles.
yeah, no, with that specific one. But no, like I know there were things that were mentioned that just clearly were a setup for something later on.
Like
Which is
rogue demon hunters.
yes.
What's a rogue demon hunter? um, yeah, watching it and like what I'm worried about for the show is how much of individuals are these characters actually going to be, or are they going to continue like their only development being in relation to the relationship with Mel?
Yeah, it's fair. I think there's kind of one playing with this in my head a little bit. I think in a way, I think each character's gonna kind of have their own growth. I don't think it's necessarily going to be in relationship to Mal, um, but I think you almost need to look at the crew as a whole as its own character as well. So I think that's where the relationships, like how is Inara growing with Mal, the other characters, and just with Serenity
Mm.
in general, right? Um, which can be a little hard to pinpoint, but that's where you go. Yep, no, hearts and brains and brawn, all being one. And again, I know that's a theme that, um, like Joss Whedon's done again in Buffy a lot too, where it's like, no, they're all kind of one character at the same time and while being their own individual one. So
Well, yeah, I'm just worried because each character has very unique personality traits. They're
yeah,
not like the same character just pointed at a different demographic.
yeah,
It's which I like, but how are they going to expand upon them?
yeah,
Because if it just ends up being like, um, just to give a random example, because I'm not going to get too spoilery, but um, say Simon's only growth being in relation to him being antagonistic or a parallel alongside Reynolds, Captain
mhm,
Reynolds, I'd be very dissatisfied
yeah,
because I want to see these characters as individuals. Uh, like I want to see them as part of the crew and their piece and function, but I also want to see them individually, which is very interesting and why I thought, though they didn't get into Zoe enough for me, you can already see that there's a foundation there for her to have her own personal life
yeah,
and as part of the whole.
yeah. No, that is very true. And ensemble shows like this are always interesting to see how the characters will develop. Um, I've seen a lot go terrible and a lot do really well. So
Oh, it's always kind of when you're doing like the ragtag, crew or team or like I'm pretty sure this group of people would play a fantastic game of soccer
yeah,
and get to the finals. You know, ducks fly together, quack quack
yeah,
quack. Um, there's no rules preventing a dog from playing basketball.
yeah. No, I'm looking forward to seeing how it builds. So
And there's one thing that I want to, because this is one season, I doubt they're gonna have I doubt they will have illustrated this well, But Simon mentioned I was contacted by some men from an underground movement.
Mm.
So I'm going to see if I can catch any more threads from that.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
Because to me, like, that would have been some, like, season 3 stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you start teasing it in 2, get into it in 3, and then maybe primary season 4, and then that's when most television should end.
Yeah.
But I want to see if there's any threads there, because I didn't notice that before. So that would be another faction that has at least been teased.
Yeah, that is good to keep an eye out for. I think that the major threads is, again, what can we actually glean? What can we glean from Book's background?
Mhm.
Oh,
Like, who is
like,
Buck? He's claiming to be like a preacher of some sort. We know he doesn't have any children, but he's also fast enough to knock a lawman. Granted, the lawman didn't seem that capable. Like, take on a lawman pretty quick.
yeah.
But then, of course, didn't have seemed to weirdly not be perceptive about some things in his environment. The way that he opened the door to where the lawman was being tied up really bothered me.
Mm.
Like, there wouldn't have been a reason to be whispering at the door. In fact, it would have been better if he had quietly entered and then started talking to him, because otherwise you're like, why is the preacher sitting there like rubbing his face up against a door? What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
I mean, it, like, obviously it showed a character moment into him getting knocked out.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could have done that inside the room.
Oh, that's another just group character moment that I think I'd be remiss without mentioning. When so when Kaylee was shot, like, she's talking to Val about them being nice. This, like, it actually didn't enter my mind that she died there. Like, rewatching it, it's like, no, it looks like she's just going to sleep.
Mm.
You could see that, like, fluttering in her eyes that happens when you're sleepy. Right. So it didn't actually enter my mind that she was dead this time around. Um, but definitely on a first viewing, I could see where it could trigger people to think that. So again, just good character moment or good acting overall to him telling Simon that she's dead. So he's gonna space her, or he's gonna. So Mal's gonna space Simon. Watching the sheer panic in Simon, which again goes back to what Kaylee says about not letting him die, right? But yeah, that could have been him just trying to save himself too.
Hmm.
No one's like, that man's psychotic. To the crew laughing about it, calling him psychotic.
Oh, it was really fun. I read
That
that. I read that moment as Simon as. I don't think he was quite panicking because he was going to be spaced. Like, the way that I read it was that he was concerned and very confused as to
yes, yeah,
how, and was like, where did it go wrong?
yeah.
Because there was a jump in time the way there that made it
Yeah,
you think that was 5 minutes later,
yeah.
but it definitely
Oh no,
didn't. It was definitely later that day, at least.
yeah.
Um, but they did lead it
There,
up pretty good.
yeah. There's only one. I would have made one slight change with it personally.
Mm.
I wouldn't have had that, like, intercut shot of Book kind of looking solemn before Simon gets there. Like, that was the only part to me that was, like, super misleading. Like, that's the part that's gonna make the audience go, "Oh, no, she's dead."
Well,
Because,
I think that's just a bad editing choice.
yes, that's what I mean.
I honestly, there was probably a cut where they saw had Book watching as Simon was running
Mhm.
and being like, "Oh my god, what's wrong?"
Yeah,
To them being like, like it might have been thrown in afterwards or something
Yeah.
to have him talking to Kaylee and them laughing.
Yeah.
Because like it didn't even seem to me that he was in the same room. The book was in the same room. I've
Yeah.
always thought that was an odd shot.
Yeah, because to me it almost came across like he's like leaving the room, like not being able to do anything, which again, yeah, just seems odd. I think it was specifically added there to play with your emotions more. Because if you see the preacher looking all solemn right after you're told,
Mm.
right? It's like
Yeah, I
they should have
guess.
edited out that. They should have edited out that 5 seconds.
Oh, it wasn't even 5 seconds. It was like
Yeah.
half a second, 1 second.
Yeah.
The shot itself, I think they just missed it.
Yeah.
Or they needed an extra 1 second of time.
Yeah. Pretty much.
It was a bad editing choice.
Yeah.
I guess other than that, lots of good little hooks for us to kind of get into. It'll be very interesting as we move on to episode technically 3 next time.
Yes.
To watch these relationships, the characters, and how they interact, and see how the world builds out even further.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to continuing this with again, that little bit more of an analytical eye.
We'll see if it falls apart. But so far, the introduction is such we don't have like established character moments that can be contradicted yet.
Yeah.
But we'll see what they do.
Yeah.
The rest of the choices seem fantastical, but still kind of reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I think as the first thing in any sci-fi series is setting the rules.
Mm.
So they've set the rules for what the fantastical elements are. The question is, do they bend them or break them?
Yeah.
Which is where a lot of media can fail. So stay internally consistent. That's all I ask.
Just waiting for the brain slugs.
Okay. Thanks again for huddling around the second wall with us here tonight. Join us next time as we continue our discussion of Firefly. Please join the conversation in the comments, on social media, or at our Discord, where we would love to get your thoughts. And of course, if you like what we do, please share us with your friends.